Over the next few weeks, we will be reading about and discussing ancient Greek heroes. So, our modern definition of what makes a hero, as you will see, is quite different from what defined ancient Greek heroes. So, let's start with just talking about how we see heroes. So, what do we think when we say the word hero? So, some of us might think about masked superheroes and capes. We might think of heroes as characters that have really cool cars and high-tech gadgets. We might think of Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, that type of hero. Or we might think of actual people that we hail as heroes in our society. So firefighters, law enforcement, doctors and nurses. We often call these people heroes as well because they're courageous and brave and they help others. But when we talk about heroes, when we're talking about ancient Greek mythology, you're going to notice that what we refer to as a hero is quite different than our modern day definition. So here's a quick rundown, then we'll talk about each one. So ancient Greek heroes, very often they have one immortal parent. So they either have a god or a goddess as one of their parents. And then very often the other parent is a royal, so a king or a queen. Very often there is a super unusual birth story surrounding them. So they don't have the normal birth that we'd expect. There's something unusual that happens. They're favored by the gods. Very often there's prediction made about them, about what's going to happen to them in the future. Oftentimes they're abandoned when they're first born. They're celebrated for their adventures and feats. They are often helped, aided, or hindered by magical elements, by things that most of us would never see. Something pretty much across the board we're going to see with Greek heroes is that they have to go on a quest. They have to go on a journey to solve a problem or fix something. Very often they travel to the underworld, and this can include having to face death or having to face what looks like a very certain death and then coming back from that. Something really unusual for us is that these ancient Greek heroes have both admirable traits and human faults. So they're not 100% perfect. In fact, a lot of times they're way not 100% perfect. And then very often these ancient Greek heroes meet with some kind of unusual death. So let's take a closer look at each of these things. Most famous heroes were the offspring of Zeus and Poseidon. Those are the most common ones. But sometimes the parent was a goddess like Aphrodite or Thetis. So for example, if you've ever heard of Achilles, Thetis was his mother. Often the hero's actual births involve some kind of strange complications or events. Like we said earlier, usually one of the parents is immortal. A lot of times another parent is royal. And very often the mother was a princess or a queen. When these heroes were first born, there was often a prediction, what we call it prophecy, made about their fate. And often this prediction was so frightening that the parents would abandon the child in the wilderness, hoping that, if we get rid of the kid, that'll end the prophecy. But because this heroic child was favored by the gods, often that child would be rescued and raised by someone else. The heroes were favored by the gods, which means that the gods would help them. If you're favored by someone, you're going to be helped by them. And so very often gods and goddesses would give the heroes special, powerful gifts, like helmets and sandals that could fly, special swords that had special powers were often given to the heroes. These heroes were celebrated for their exploits, for their accomplishments. The stories live on. They're told on through generations. Very often songs were created to sing about these heroes, and symbols of the heroes are very valued. We'll see that in some of the stories that we'll be reading soon. This now is similar to our modern day hero definition, is that the heroes perform amazing feats. I think that's something we still expect from our modern day heroes. They attempt and accomplish things that most humans would not. Like they wouldn't even put themselves in those situations to begin with. The ancient heroes would do that. And very often they demonstrate physical strength or power. They can also demonstrate intellectual power. So they might solve a riddle that no one's been able to solve before, or they might fix a problem that no one else has been able to do. Almost always heroes are called to an adventure, and meaning that they have to go on a journey or a quest. Maybe they have to defeat a monster, they have to get rid of an evil king, they have to right some kind of wrong. And the heroes would pretty willingly do this because they wanted that taste of immortality. They wanted their names to live forever, even though they could not. On that quest, they're very often aided or hindered by magic. Hindered means it gets in the way of. So often they face challenges that involve magic or supernatural elements. So this first story that we'll be reading in week 13 is about Perseus, and you'll see he's facing a supernatural being that creates a lot of challenge. They can also be helped by magical elements. So sometimes the gods or goddesses will give them a magical sword, shield, cap, winged sandals that will help them on their way too. Very often in that quest, in that journey, they travel to the underworld. Now, sometimes literally they go to the underworld. Other times they face almost certain death. Like for most people that would be in that situation, it would mean the end of them. The heroes face that moment. It looks like we're going to lose them. They win and they come back. And when they come back, they're stronger and they're rejuvenated. They're ready to keep going. And then the other thing that is unusual to us when we define heroes, we usually only talk about positive attributes. For the ancient Greek heroes, they showed both good and bad human traits. So they are courageous, loyal, brave, but you'll also see that they demonstrate rage and jealousy. They make some pretty hasty decisions, like they act first and think later. That was just common. You're going to see that in all the Greek heroes that we discuss. And then at the very end, they're usually met with some kind of unusual death. And it's tragic, feels like it could have been avoidable, but usually they have some kind of unfortunate end. And remember, because only one of their parents was immortal, that these heroes typically were not immortal. They had that human side to them. So in the next few weeks, we'll be reading stories of 3 different ancient Greek heroes, and I want you to keep these characteristics in mind.